Hi, tonight we're making dinner. We are taking a bunch of the foods that we have freeze-dried and we are reconstituting them and cooking them. A lot of people have watched the videos that we've put on about freeze-drying food in our pantry, but this is the other side of that. Storage is one piece, but how do you actually use it? We use freeze-dried food a lot for, not only for preparing for whatever may come, but also for just meal prepping. We like to eat fresh vegetables, and in January or February, which right now is the end of January, it's hard to come by a lot of fresh vegetables. So like this is zucchini and squash that we grew in our garden this year. It's nice to be able to enjoy that this time of year. So we don't hold on to a lot of our foods for years and years. We just may hold it till winter. So I'm going to show you how we reconstitute these foods, and then we're going to cook some. So that is sweet potatoes, carrots. You hear the nice suction sound that comes from releasing the vacuum on these. We sealed all these jars with the food saver attachment for sealing mason jars, and you'll find that in the links on the show notes in our Amazon storefront. This one is zucchini, and this is onions. This is a lot of onions. These are candy apple onions that we grew in our garden. We pulled these up out of the ground last July, and oh, they're wonderful. But we don't want to use a whole jar of these, so what I'm going to do is pour out what we will use, and you hear how crunchy these are. They kind of have the texture of styrofoam right now. That's about all I'm going to use.
Let's show one breaking here.
Yeah. Now the cool thing is, if you look at this jar, there's a lot of onions there. That jar is only a third gone, so we've got a lot more to use, and we'll reseal this later. I'm going to put it over here for now. Now we're going to rehydrate all these. When you freeze dry food, you want to store it somehow. Harvest Right sells, and they work really well, a Mylar bag that you can store your food in, and they claim that you can store that food for 25 plus years, and maybe you can. We do use the bags, but we don't use them exclusively. I like the idea of doing them in these jars because, one, they're a good sized serving that you'll see in a moment when we start cooking the food, and it's really easy to rehydrate. So I've got hot water here. This is boiled water. I'm going to pour over these foods. And again, these are crunchy, but they're not, they're, a lot of people think that you have to eat freeze-dried foods freeze-dried, but you can also rehydrate them, which is what we're doing right now. After these sit for about 10 or 15 minutes, I'm gonna run out of water. Please wait.
I'm just putting the lids back on so that we can flip the jars over. Because the stuff kind of floats to the top whenever you add the water. If you seal them real good, you can flip them over.
And you'll notice these lids have been reused. This is one way of recycling. We always use brand new flats when we can, but we reuse those flats when we
I'm gonna burn myself. When we
do freeze drying. Yeah, that's super duper hot.
Yeah.
And then the onions, I'm just gonna cover them in hot water and let them sit for a few minutes.
Onions rehydrate super easily.
They do.
So they don't need as much time or as much water as sweet potatoes and carrots.
And I'm just going to use a spoon to kind of stir these up and let them sit for a little bit. I think it's fair to say that you can't really over rehydrate once they've accepted their water back and soaked it up.
Most things.
On this stuff at least.
Yeah, raw vegetables you can't really.
Raw vegetables.
Yeah.
Just, put them in water, let them sit for a while, and when you're ready to cook them, strain off all the water you can, and then use them. Which here in a few minutes we will fry these up like we eat them every night and
The onions smell so good.
They do. Okay, we're going to drain the water off of these now. They're sufficiently rehydrated. Since we stopped the camera, I think we've probably been about 10 minutes, maybe a little less. So what we're going to do, and we flip these over a couple of times. So we're going to pull the lids off of these, and if you were to feel these, it doesn't feel like a fresh carrot slice or a fresh sweet potato slice. They're a little bit gummy, and pardon the Band-Aids, it's been a rough day on the farm. They're a little bit spongy feeling, but know that these are all raw vegetables. And raw vegetables, when you freeze dry them and then rehydrate them, have a little bit of a spongy feeling, but you still have to cook them. And cooking them is what gives them back their feeling as a normal vegetable. We've got these in the sink over a colander and draining them. Okay. So this is 2 quart jars, one of sweet potatoes, one of carrots. And if you were to feel these, like I said before, these are going to feel a little spongy, but they're definitely soft. You could pull them apart if you wanted to, but they're going to feel more like a frozen vegetable that's been, a frozen raw vegetable that's been thawed. When you cook it, you'll notice it a lot less. It feels a lot more like fresh. We eat fresh sweet potatoes and carrots and green beans and squash like this pretty much with every meal. And I can't tell the difference really between, once the food is cooked, between the freeze-dried and fresh versus frozen. You can kind of tell a little bit. Plus, especially when you're when you go a few months after freezing and you start to get that weird freezer burn feeling or taste out of it, you don't have that at all with this.
All right, we're gonna put this in the skillet now. One hand. We've got skillet hot bacon grease in this one, right? To cook these in, saved from bacon that we cured and raised here on our farm. Super tasty. They need a lot of bacon grease. And what are these pans called? These are
Stainless steel or
carbon steel?
Carbon steel.
Carbon
Thank you.
steel, yeah.
Instead of cast iron. We have a lot of cast iron. We love cast iron, but with an induction cooktop that is glass, it's a little dangerous to use cast iron. And I got these carbon steel pans and really like them. You treat them a lot like you do a cast iron pan. You season them, you clean them just like you do a cast iron pan, but they're about 1/3 the weight. So I can pick this pan up and do that, which is really hard to do with a cast iron pan.
Okay, we're just going to put this nifty silicone lid on here and turn it down and let those cook while we go back to the counter and drain.
I've got another pan right here prepped and ready
Yes.
for the green goods.
Green beans, squash, and onions go in one pan. Okay.
Okay, here are the green beans.
Let them
Let those
drain.
drain.
Should have scrubbed the sink before this video.
Yeah, that'd be neat.
But, you know, we use it. So.
Yeah.
So,
Our subscribers get the family treatment. We don't necessarily clean before you come over. Sorry. So, I'm going to use a spoon to help out the squash and green beans. I think it's worth pointing out why we're making so much. A small family or a single person might want to do this with pint jars. We're doing this with quart jars. So right now we're making 4 full quart jars plus the onions.
another way to do that, if you needed to make less, would be to freeze dry them already mixed.
Yes, which we have done some of.
Yes, we've done several jars that are mixed carrots and sweet potatoes just because of how it came out.
So that is
Another thing.
green beans and squash. And the main reason I was going to say that we do so many at a time is we're feeding 8 people at a time. This dinner, when we go to serve it up to the kids, is going to be shared across 6 kids. Plus, it's going to be dinner for us a little bit later on tonight. So this is a large meal. Plus, it will have some leftovers. We don't do this every night. We do this ideally every 3 days and eat leftovers. So
There's that.
there's that.
Another thing I want to talk about is the squash. This is kind of an exciting jar. I don't think you even know this, right?
Yeah.
These little guys. No, that's not loofah. It's either a like snake gourd or a zucchino rampanato, I think. I will show you some pictures of those. I can't remember which one it is, but I know it is not a regular zucchini or yellow squash like the others in the jar. And we've
But
not.
loofah looks like this one is young.
Loofah does look like that. It's some kind of gourd or winter squash that was picked early.
Along with our regular.
Yeah, but this is definitely our first time using that type of squash freeze dried. I've eaten plenty of them fresh. But.
Yes.
Just dump those in the pan.
Mix around a little bit of good bacon grease. And we'll turn that down just a little bit and cover it. We'll come back to that in just a little bit as well.
Another thing to mention about this is you may want to salt or add herbs to your.
Yeah.
We need to get the onions in there too.
Onions will come a little bit later. We'll reconstitute.
But we add salt afterwards so that it's more of a personal preference thing.
Yeah. And lastly, we're going to drain off these onions. Again, this is about 1/3 of a quart jar of onions that we reconstituted. These feel very similar to a fresh onion. They're just a little bit squishier. The smell is amazing. You would think we were just standing here cutting these candy apple red onions, but these are ones we dug up in our garden 8 months ago. Mm-hmm. We're going to add these to our stir-fry vegetables here in just a little bit. We wait till they're a little closer to done. If we add them too early, they overcook and will burn when they hit the bottom of the pan. So I like to make sure the sweet potatoes and carrots are about 75% cooked before we add the onions. Okay, we are adding the onions to our carrots and sweet potatoes. See, these are starting to brown just a little bit, which is a nice texture and color that you get with the freeze-dried stuff. Put the rehydrated onions in, mix them around. I'll let them sit on top for just a little bit before I stir them in, but I'm going to leave the cover off. We've been using this silicone cover to let the sweet potatoes and carrots cook in their own steam. And now that they're pretty well cooked, you can cut one of these carrots open. Yeah, not quite. It's 75% cooked, I would say, which is when I like to add the onions. And this is a good time to turn the heat up on a scale of 1 to 10. I turned it up from a 4 to about a 6. And this will help brown the vegetables and let them dry out just a little bit so you have a individual vegetable, not a little gooey mess. And I'll do the same over here. We'll stir these, slight risk, and I'll turn these up to about a 6 or 7 and let them dry out a little bit. I'd say these are fully cooked at this point. They just need to brown a little bit, caramelize some of the sugars that are naturally within them, and then we'll be ready to plate and eat.
The green vegetables too with the freeze-dried, especially the green beans, and really both of them, the green beans and the squash, they really need to not be overcooked. If you overcook them, they get like stew. But if you just have to not
a little
overcook
rubbery maybe.
Rubbery, yeah. It's kind of like frozen vegetables. Way.
Yeah.
You have to be kind of careful to not overdo it. These guys, though, they aren't sticky.
And we'll keep Trying these. Oh yeah, these are looking good.
Turn this one down.
Yep.
Look at those
You know,
beautiful
look at
brown
those.
veggies.
Would you believe that these are all fresh out of the garden and it is the end of January?
Not this side though. Carrots and sweet potatoes are from the store.
Yeah, they are. But the onions aren't, and the carrots, I'm sorry, and the green beans and the squash are fresh out of the garden.
We are going to try to grow more carrots and probably not sweet potatoes realistically.
Yeah.
They take up a lot of space, but I am trying to grow a lot more carrots this year. Hopefully we'll have our own freeze-dried carrots for
And
next season.
we got our freeze dryer right at 1 year ago. We thought we'd be using it to just supplement our canning, but now that we know that we can use this to actually help facilitate meal prepping on an annual basis, not just on a week-to-week basis, meaning that we can actually prep meals in the freeze dryer when we're really busy and don't have time to make fresh food, but we can make the freeze-dried food that we prepared fresh when they're in season. It's an evolution. We're learning as we go along. We had no idea we'd be using our freeze dryer for this when we got it a year ago. And a year from now, we're going to be finding that we use our freeze dryer for things that we hadn't even planned on.
Yes, I would really like to try cooking this meal with fresh vegetables, wow, and freeze drying it cooked and
Ooh.
see what happens if we could just rehydrate it and then put it in the pan to heat it up.
Challenge accepted.
Yes.
Hi.
Is that good food? Is it your favoriteest ever?
What's your favorite food?
Cooked carrots and cooked sweet potatoes and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
Of course. And maybe a little ketchup. He's also got some chicken that we raised. Is the chicken yummy?
Yeah. Ew, I wanted some ketchup.
You wanted some ketchup?
Yeah. Oh, my.
What do you think of your veggies, Teddy?
What?
That's the chicken. But cool.
Ugh.